Where was I when I found out the USSR fell, or that is the dissolution of the Soviet Union? It would have been over Christmas break. I was in college at the time. I would have been watching it unfold on the news from home. But in a couple of years prior to that, what was more striking to me was the Romanian Revolution. We know that the communist countries, the Eastern Bloc, were all sort of trying to get out from under the heavy boot of communism, and Romania was probably the one that was the most striking to me, where Nicholas Ceausescu and his wife were executed before a firing squad on Christmas Day in 1989. That wasn't covered as extensively in the news as the dissolution of the Soviet Union a few years later, but it was certainly very, very striking to me. Second question is, why do I think it happened? Well, I think the will of the people joined up with the will of the military leaders and pressure from the West and so on. I mean, the communist system under the Soviet government simply wasn't sustainable. So I think that's why it happened, for economic, military, and social reasons primarily. How did it affect life in America? Certainly in North America. Obviously we're from Canada, and that happened while I was living in Canada, but the life in North America overall, naturally the U.S. news and reaction to all this spilled over into Canada easily, so we were readily affected by it as much as the United States. But how did it affect life? Well, we used to look at the Soviet Union as being an antagonist, an enemy. I remember being told in elementary school that the Soviet Union, if it had ever gone to war with the United States, Canada would have definitely been wrapped up in it. The Russians would have invaded from over the North Pole through the Canadian Arctic, and we would have been there with our ally in the U.S. to support and repel any type of invasion. If a nuclear war would have happened, certainly Canada would have been involved, and in fact a number of Canadian cruise missile tests, U.S. Cruise missile tests, were done in the Canadian tundra because it closely matched the terrain in Russia. So, there's definitely a lot of concern about the Soviet Union and its effect on the world, and certainly North America felt it overall. So, how did it affect life? The dissolution of the Soviet Union, I think, a big sigh of relief, I think, could probably describe it. Although a lot of us who, at the time I was in college, a lot of us at the time wondered who this Boris Yeltsin guy was, and why was our Canadian Prime Minister going out and partying with him and hunting wild boars in the Russian wilderness. It just kind of looked like Boris was just trying to get into the old boys club of the G20. So maybe that was or wasn't the case, but that's kind of how it affected life in the West here. Hope all of this helps. Thanks very much.